A man allows his wife to have passionate nights with other men to avoid divorce. However, something very strange starts happening. The woman's lovers begin to disappear one by one, making our protagonist the main suspect. Is he guilty, or is there something hidden behind these events? Hello everyone, today I'll summarize Deep Water. After cycling for a while, Vic returned home, where his wife Melinda was waiting for him. She didn't say much and instead went up the stairs. Shortly after, the babysitter arrived to take care of Trixie while the couple attended a party. Melinda asked Vic which dress she should wear, and he, of course, replied and even helped her with her shoes. At that moment, Melinda told him that she loved him, but Vic did not respond. Later, they attended the party, where Melinda, upon seeing a man named Joel, approached him immediately. Vic noticed that his wife wasted no time, taking him out to the patio, where she kissed him passionately. Minutes later, Melinda told Vic that she and Joel had become very good friends. They had only invited Joel because Melinda had insisted, which made Vic suspect that she was cheating on him. Although Vic responded casually, Melinda insisted that she was serious, and that worried everyone. At that moment, Grant interrupted. Melinda was very drunk on the piano and began to play, which she did brilliantly. After this, Vic went to the bar, where Joel approached him to thank him for allowing him to see Melinda. Some husbands were jealous about these matters. Vic then asked Joel if he knew Marty Mari. Joel replied that yes, he was the guy who had disappeared. Vic told him that he saw his wife a lot, so he killed him. Joel thought it was a joke, but Vic made him understand that it was true. For this reason, Joel left the party. At the end of the celebration, Melinda asked what he had said, but Vic replied that it was nothing, something the girl didn't believe. Once at home, Melinda began to undress, so Vic quickly dismissed the babysitter. After that, he went upstairs with her and helped her take off her dress, mentioning that she should look for smarter subjects. The girl replied that she liked the silly ones, but that excited her because it made him enjoy her as she was. Vic did not respond, so Melinda added that he should close the door when leaving, which he did before going to admire his pets, dozens and dozens of snails. The next day, Vic took Trixie to school, where a woman commented on a rumor he was a murderer. Vic told her that he had said it jokingly, but the woman replied that now everyone knew. This was true, as Tom had been advised to be careful with that kind of threat. Vic said he didn't know what they were talking about. Of course you do, they told him. Melinda sleeps with guys and brags about it to everyone. You need to control her. Once home, the girl, upset, confronted him about what he had said to Joel. She knew he had said something wrong but never believed he would mock what happened to Martin. He was her friend, and she missed him. Vic apologized, but Melinda told him it wasn't enough, he also needed to apologize to Joel. He would be in town on Saturday, so she had invited him to dinner on Friday. The day finally arrived, and this time Vic was kinder to Joel, who told him he had gotten a job in New Mexico. Vic responded that they should celebrate then, as he had prepared the narrow. Joel commented that he was allergic to shellfish, which is why he ended up making a sandwich. When she saw him, Melinda asked for a bit, saying it looked delicious. Vic, seeing her talking while eating, said she ate like a child, which sparked a tense conversation. In the end, Melinda mentioned that Vic was not a normal person. Normal people relaxed. At that moment, Vic asked if she wanted him to be normal. Yes, all the time, she replied. Well, if I were normal, I wouldn't be having dinner with us. Joel, hearing this, felt so uncomfortable that he decided to go to the bathroom. Taking advantage of the situation, Melinda told Trixie that it was time to sleep since her father would read her a long story. Vic had no choice but to go upstairs with the little girl. In the room, Trixie asked Vic why her mother acted differently when there were other people around. Vic explained that adults were complex. The girl added that she didn't like Joel and, after a while, fell asleep. Upon leaving the room, Vic noticed how his wife was enjoying herself with Joel. To get her attention, he made noise in the kitchen. Upon hearing him, Melinda told him not to wash the dishes, that she would do it the next day. However, if he wanted to do something, he could bring a drink to Joel. Vic ended up doing so, and Joel asked him if he would apologize. Why would I? I really Martin. I hit him with a hammer. Oh, look, your Uber has arrived, it's time to go, Vic replied. Days later, the family attended a party where they met Don, a young writer who had discovered a great conspiracy in his town. Upon hearing his story, the kids made faces of disbelief. Sure, they thought. Despite this, Don asked Vic what he did for a living. Vic replied that he was retired and that now he just rode his bike and raised his daughter. Kelly, Don's wife, asked what he had retired from. It was then that Melinda explained that Vic had created a chip for drones that located people who were exposing themselves. Don commented that those drones were used in war and innocent people, which tensed the situation. Although the guy worsened the situation by claiming he now knew where he had heard the name, it was the one who had killed Martin Marr. The kids commented that it had just been a joke, allowing the party to continue. Despite not dancing, Vic surprised everyone by inviting Kelly to dance, something they had never seen before. At the end of the party, Melinda asked Vic if he wanted to sleep with her and if he thought he was better than her in bed. Vic didn't respond, so Melinda decided to go down and do him a favor orally, but all she managed to do was bite him. For some reason, this ignited them, and they ended up having a night of passion. Days later, the couple attended a game of Trixies, where Vic received a call from the bank. Melinda had issued a bounce check for $3,000 in the name of Charles Delisle, for piano lessons. This raised suspicions in Vic. Not only had she wasted the money in the account, but the check was for a considerable amount. Therefore, he decided to call every restaurant in the city with live music until he finally found the guy, and indeed, his wife was seeing him. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he returned home and noted two things. First, that Melinda had gone out without her ring, and second, that Martin's body had been found in the woods, shot to death. Upon arriving home, Melinda mentioned that she had an amazing night, but Vic told her he had something to tell her. Martin had been found, he was very sorry. The girl didn't believe him, and without further ado, she went upstairs to her room. The next day, Vic took Trixie to look for a puppy and, upon returning, realized that Charles was bringing flowers. The flowers were for Melinda since they were there when they got home, and at the first opportunity, Vic mentioned it to her. Shortly after, Grant informed Vic that they had caught Martin's murderer, which would help dispel the rumors. By the way, they were at the restaurant where Charles was playing, so Vic took the opportunity to tell him he was doing great. Upon returning home, Vic visited his snails, but all he could think about was what Melinda was doing with Charles. The girl hadn't come home all night, however. When she finally did, Vic asked her where she had been. Melinda replied that she wouldn't tell him, and then threw him a challenging question. So, are you going to tell me why I gave Charles Delisle $3,000? Vic, surprised, answered that he didn't want to know. What the hell are you doing? He asked. Oh, I finally notice. Jealousy. Do you want to know if we're together? If he makes me finish, how do I do it? Did he leave a bruise on me? Do you want to see it? Vic told her she needed to stop seeing him. Okay, we'll get a divorce, Melinda replied. No, because you will listen to me. You know, Vic? Looking at you like this, I would think you would throw me to the floor and do it to me. But for that, passion is required, passion that you would have if you really loved me. Shortly after, another party arrived, to which Melinda, of course, invited the guy she was kissing. There, she introduced him to everyone, making him play the piano while Vic watched with a look of disdain. Melinda approached him, caressing him a bit, you know, that kind of caress. After this, she introduced Charles to Vic. Charlie, of course, had been seen somewhere, although Vic said he had never seen him before. As night fell, Melinda disappeared from Vic's sight, of course, because she was alone with Charles. Vic decided to go to the pool, where shortly after, Melinda arrived, enjoying being with Charles, something our friend could not tolerate at all. After a while, it started to rain, so most of the guests went into the house. One of the girls asked Melinda for help making cookies, so she went inside too, leaving only Vic, Grant, and Charles. Grant left, something Don noticed. A few minutes later, Vic went for cookies and burned his hand. Shortly after, Charles was unconscious in the pool. Everyone rushed to him, but when they tried to pull him out, he fell. The guy ended up dying, so when the police arrived, they began to question everyone. At that moment, Melinda shouted that Vic had killed him. I knew it, she exclaimed and told the detectives her theory. The guys, for their part, explained what had happened. They had tried to help, but Don had dropped him, which caused the blow to the head. Don stated that it hadn't affected the death, and after that, they questioned Vic. Melinda had told them about his relationship with Charles, which might have enraged Vic. He replied that he didn't tell his wife what to do but that he hadn't killed Charles. He had been inside stealing cookies and had actually burned himself. In the end, the officers determined that Charles, being drunk, had drowned, and that the blow to the head was accidental, something Melinda did not believe. Hours later, Vic asked Melinda if she wanted a divorce now. After all, if she thought he was a murderer, she must surely be afraid. She replied that she wasn't afraid because he had killed for her. Days later, while they were walking, several images flashed through Vic's mind. On one hand, Melinda having a passionate moment with Charles, and on the other, him attacking the guy. Vic then came to his senses, noticing that someone was following him, which continued for several streets. The next day, after dropping off Trixie, Kelly told Vic that she needed to tell him something. She did not approve, but her husband and Melinda were meeting to discuss how he could have killed Charles. Vic appreciated the information and decided to invite both of them to dinner. After dinner, Vic invited Don to see his snails, where he told him he had to let others know he was a murderer. Don replied that he really believed he was guilty, so he would only believe him if he ensured he wasn't a murderer under a lie detector test. The next day, while walking, our friend saw the car that was following him. This vehicle had a camera, and when he turned around, he realized Melinda was having lunch with a guy. Without hesitation, Vic introduced himself, and the man identified himself as David, a psychotherapist. "Would you really give me a card?" Vic asked. David replied that he didn't have one, so Vic simply walked away. A week later, he visited Don since he knew he had hired David to investigate him. Don said he didn't know what Vic was talking about, but Vic showed him a transfer from Melinda to his account, which evidenced that the investigator was being paid. Don apologized to Vic, who left, noticing how Melinda was out with another man. The girl was not wasting any time. Anyway, Vic gave Trixie a bath, who hinted that he had killed Charles. Vic denied having done it, but the little one insisted, so he told her it was okay, but she shouldn't tell anyone. After this, he noticed that Melinda had already arrived and was talking on the phone. The guy invited her and Trixie to Brazil. The next day, Tony showed up to see Vic. He was an old friend of Melinda. Incredibly, Vic treated him wonderfully, so Tony told him that he made sustainable houses both in his country and in Brazil. At that moment, Melinda arrived, and just to annoy Vic, she said that Tony was the first American she had slept with. This did not please Vic at all. To ease the situation, Tony suggested they could eat a couple of snails, which only made things worse, as Vic considered snails pets, not food. Additionally, he explained that to eat snails, you first had to starve them, because otherwise, they were highly poisonous. Then dinner time came, and after that, Melinda and Tony went up to her room. Vic couldn't help but spy, something that did not go unnoticed by the girl. That situation eventually tired our friend, so the next day he decided to follow Tony, and when he had the opportunity, he mentioned that Melinda had tried to contact him, as she wanted to show him some construction. Tony believed him and got into the car while Vic started driving through the woods. Tony noticed that everything was very strange, especially since Vic was asking him questions about him and Melinda. He tried to call the girl, but there was a problem, there was no signal. After a while, Vic finally stopped the car and both got out. At that moment, Vic threw a rock at Tony and then a larger one, causing him to fall down the ravine. After this, Vic tied a large rock to Tony's body, took his wallet, and without further ado, sank him in the river. He then returned home with a smile on his face and, upon arrival, commented that he liked Tony, considering him a clever person. Melinda asked him if he had seen him, but Vic replied that he had not. Shortly after, the guy went to his studio and then returned home, where the girls told him they were going on a picnic and that if he wanted to, he could join them. "I'd love to," Vic replied. "Where are we going?" "To the ravine." The family finally went to the ravine, where Trixie began to explore. Melinda then asked Vic why he was the only one who wanted to be with her. He replied that he didn't know, but that it was truly something he desired. At that moment, they became affectionate, although Melinda asked another question, "Aren't you bored?" "No, and you?" "No, but I'm sad," the girl replied. Listening to her, Vic gave her a book he had prepared for her. In addition to having poetry, it contained photographs of little details from the girl's life. She was the love of his life. This made her very happy, but at that moment, Vic realized that his daughter was very close to the river. When he went to look for her, he saw Tony's body floating and knew he needed to do something. On the way back home, Melinda mentioned that she had left her handkerchief in the woods, which was the perfect excuse to go back, so Vic said he would go looking for it first thing in the morning. Once at home, Vic noticed that Melinda was talking on the phone, so he asked her if it was with Tony. She replied that she didn't know anything about him, that she was talking to Don. After that, the girl asked our friend to sleep with her that night, to which he agreed. At that moment, she confessed that she loved him, which led to a rather sincere moment of passion between them. The next day, Vic left early for the forest on his bike, while Melinda began searching among the snails and suddenly found Tony's wallet. This discovery deeply saddened her, and without thinking any further, she decided to pack her things and leave. Meanwhile, Vic, who had returned to the spot, started to push the body down again with a stick, just as Don arrived, asking what the hell he was doing. Vic replied that he was looking for Melinda's handkerchief, but Don clarified that he had already found it. Then, Don noticed that Vic had something strange on his back, so Vic showed the stick, which caused the body to surface. Upon seeing this, Don didn't hesitate for a moment and began to run towards his car. Vic grabbed his bike and pedaled with all his might, while Don Albaresto thought that he had already won and that he could never catch him, so he accelerated fully. With no options left, Vic decided to take a shortcut. On the other hand, Trixie noticed her mother's large suitcase and knew she was leaving, so she threw it into the pool. Seeing this, Melinda asked her what she was doing, and Trixie firmly replied that they were not leaving there. This left the woman deep in thought. Returning to Don, he started to send a message, but he dropped his phone. He didn't try to pick it up, and at that moment, Vic appeared in front of him. Don, without hesitation, turned the steering wheel, causing his car to flip over the cliff. After that, Vic returned home as if nothing had happened, where Melinda was waiting for him, just like at the beginning of the movie. She told him that she had seen Tony, which surprised Vic. However, the truth was that she had burned the wallet. Melinda continued with the lie towards her husband, because she had noticed that, despite the twisted nature of their relationship, he really loved her.